The views, statements, and opinions expressed in this episode are solely our own, including our guest, and these do not necessarily represent those of our employers.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Georgie.
And I'm Vijay,
And welcome to our podcast, Diversity and Inclusion, Satisfying the Tick Box.
In today's episode, we're going to cover entrepreneurship. We've got a very special guest, Dhruvin, who is the founder and CEO of Ocushield, to share his personal journey and also his experiences as an entrepreneur with us. So, Dhruvin, welcome. Can you give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, guys. Introduction. So my background is optometry. I studied at City University in London. Whilst I was there, I did some research on how artificial light from screens affects our eyes' physiology and circadian rhythms, so effectively our eye structures and sleep and wake cycles. And quickly after doing that research, I found that artificial light from screens was affecting our eyes by causing eye strain, headaches, but also suppressing melatonin, so making it really hard for us to fall asleep, but also have a well-rested sleep. And I was a student at the time when I did the research, so around 2013, 14, and I was using multiple devices. I thought, this is a problem that I need to solve for myself, but also for the future generations as screens are only getting bigger and brighter. So I got a grant from the university, developed our first line of products, and then effectively bootstrapped a business by creating a website and shipping products from my university dorm room. Now I'm pleased to say Ocushield's a international business. We are an omni-channel business, so as well as selling direct to consumer, our medically registered screen filters, glasses, and lighting products, which are eye-friendly and help with sleep. We also sell into retailers like John Lewis, WH Smith Travel, Virgin mega stores overseas, and as well as supplying employers like Mackenzie and Barclays with our products. But yeah, we exist to let eyes thrive here at Ocushield. But yeah, it all started at university when I was studying, and here we are today.
Thank you, Dhruvin. And just to clarify, what university was that?
City University in London.
Hey, we both went to the same uni. I went a couple of years later to do my master's, but City University, big shout out to you. But we're going to take it back, Dhruvin. Actually, we go back since we're 10, 11, as in year 7. We actually went to the same school, same year and same class. So how was your experience going to Langfranc? And big shout out to all the Langfranc Mandem, as they call it in Croydon. Did that shape you in any way, sort of form?
Yeah, I mean, look, Langfranc was a really interesting environment. So Langfranc was in Croydon, it was in Mitcham within Croydon in South London, and predominantly the school was a very challenging time for many. I mean, school generally is a challenging time for many. There's loads of different variables happening and affecting individuals, but I think for us as well, it almost felt like a little bit of a jungle where you don't know what to expect every day, because I remember our school was one of those schools that accepted pupils that regularly got expelled from other schools 2 or 3 times, and I think we had a headmaster at the time that was quite understanding in the sense of wanting to give people second chances, but 9 times out of 10 I think those second chances for those individuals probably didn't end up right, because they just kept on causing lots of mayhem and trouble. And we had lots of interesting stories that happened at Croydon, let's say, from children stealing teachers' cars when understand we're not even at an age where we can drive. Yeah, which is wild, to kids hitting teachers or getting fights to teachers, and it was just lots of mayhem. But for me, I think now looking back at where we grew up, I think growing up in that environment really gave myself the hunger to get out of that environment, because I saw my parents working very hard, and they chose Croydon once they immigrated from India to the UK. They didn't obviously know about the ins and outs of what the area was like, but I saw for them as well, the area impacted them in terms of their lifestyle, commuting to their jobs or whatever else. And yeah, for me, just growing up in Croydon gave me the hunger. And I think a lot of people in our school also had the same hunger, because they came from other similar backgrounds where everyone was in the same boat, where there were not privileged in the sense of financially, but also from maybe troublesome homes. So I think everyone wanted to do something incredible with themselves in the sense of really drive themselves to, accomplish something. So I think for me, that was the biggest learning that came from, is the drive, which I see from, people that came from the school.
Thank you for sharing that, Dhruvin. And let me tell you something, as someone who's been a classmate of yours, you are definitely a success story from Croydon, from Langfang, and you keep pushing. And one thing that you've done is inspire the next generations that are coming through as well. So kudos to you, Dhruvin.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just from what you said about your parents working hard, is there kind of anyone or anything in particular that kind of motivates you?
Yeah, from my younger days, it was very much so, how can I give back to my parents who have worked so hard to put food on a plate, to take us on holidays when they could. And naively, I thought business was the area where you can make money fast and a lot of it and be able to give back to them. And obviously, from being on the journey myself, it's the total opposite, in the sense of it takes a lot of graft to actually you in business, you end up reinvesting in the early days into the business, right? You don't want to draw a salary or take money out, because you're growing effectively a baby, which in the big wide world, where you need to reinvest and grow its kind of visibility in the world. And it's one of those things where it's kind of, I think entrepreneurship can be glamorized in that sense, where people think, right, people doing amazing things, but actually it does take some patience and perseverance to get to a point where actually you see, one, the financial benefits of it, but two, also the ability to then thrive in that environment, because it's a journey in itself.
I just want to ask you, and in terms of that then, Dhruvin, how would you, talking to your younger self, what is the advice that you'd give yourself, but also advice to those individuals that are coming through schools like Langfang?
Yeah, I think the advice I give to my younger self is, I think I wouldn't, there isn't much I'd give myself, because I think everything is quite unique to everyone's journey, right? All the learnings and mistakes you make it allows you to get to where you are. So for me, everything I did from starting a business, I almost did it blindly. Most people say, create a business plan, speak to people. I did the opposite. I just said, right, I have an idea. I know I want to solve this pain point. I'm going to go out there and create something. And if people want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't, right? It was a very linear approach, black and white. But for me, that worked. For individuals that are younger and in a position of, let's say in Lanfranc, for example, and thinking about what they want to do, or potentially what they want to accomplish, I think it's just, whatever they do is just put the hard work in. And unfortunately, there's no replacement for hard work. There's a lot of people that talk about working smart now, which is great. You can work smart, but whenever you want to master something or hone in a skill or create something, it requires dedicated hours. And if you're thinking about creating something or doing something that's outside of the norm, the best time to do it is when we are within the education system, I believe, from, let's say, college upward, because you generally don't have any responsibilities. You have no dependents. Most people don't have children. You're not paying off a mortgage. You're not doing all those things. And those pressures play a big part in your success, because creating anything new and unique requires your 100% focus. And if you have pressures from raising a family to financial pressures to whatever else it is, it's very difficult. And I applaud a lot of people that start businesses in their later years when they do have those kinds of dependence, because it becomes very challenging. But if you can start something in the in your earlier years alongside whatever you're doing, whether it's studying or working, you probably have a better chance of succeeding, because there's less pressure on yourself, but you're learning as you go along simultaneously with what you're doing day to day.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice as well for people that want to kind of get into entrepreneurship. And I was just wondering, is it always something that you've wanted to do? What kind of led you down that road?
I mean, I wanted to be a footballer when I was younger, but there you go. That didn't work out. As
Bit different.
Yeah, I got injured, so that didn't work out. But no, I think, from when I was younger, I always had an interest in business, just purely because I thought that is where you can, hit a home run and again, financially reward the people around you. Yeah, you can create something of value, right? So I always saw that, and I didn't know where that would lead me. But when I went around choosing my course at university, again, one of the big factors was, one, the course allowed me to study biology. I loved helping people, which was great. But also when I did work experience, they said, well, it's quite easy for you to open up an opticians when you're an optometrist. There's not a lot of red tape. You can open up your own store and, effectively start your own business. For me, I was like, oh, that's great. That really appealed to me when I was choosing the course I wanted. So that's how I got to the point in terms of being an optometrist. But now I remember, actually, as well as being a footballer, I really wanted to be a programmer. So I loved computers. So my two work experiences I did was working in an opticians, but also working in an IT store. And unfortunately, I did computing at A level, and there was a lot of zeros and ones involved when you were creating code and programs. But no, my teachers didn't tell me, actually, when you do this as a job or move forward, you almost copy and there's loads of, there's templates out there where you're not having to hard code stuff. And I just thought to myself, if I'm going to be doing coding where I'm putting zeros and ones manually for the rest of my life, I was like, that's not it for me. So that put me off doing that, actually.
Yeah, I don't blame you, to be honest. It would have done the same for me, I think. So I've heard that you appeared on Dragon's Den, which is really exciting. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So in 2021, I believe, was that the year of the pandemic, the first year, or was it 2020?
I think 2020.
2020, there you go, 2020. Your memory is much better than mine, Vijay. So yeah, in 2020, when in March, a BBC researcher kind of sent an email to the team and said, hey, we think Ocushield would be great on Dragon's Den. Do you want to apply? And, I've grown up watching the program and absolutely loved it. And I've always said to myself, one day I want to go on that show. And I never had the courage to go on it, in the sense of, I always thought, oh, we're not quite ready to go on there, because in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, am I going to get laughed out of the room? Is it going to, am I going to lose credibility? Is the business going to suffer? And you never think, I never thought, I found the time to go on there. But when the researcher reached out to us, I thought, they've come to us. That must mean that we must be ready. And I said, right, we have to apply for this. So we filled out these forms, we applied, and then we didn't hear anything for 6 months. So I was like, oh, okay, that must have been a bad application. But of course, the pandemic kicked off, and the BBC team were on furlough. And then in September, they reached back out and said, hey, we'd love for you to pitch to the video producers via a Zoom call within 7 days, which we did. And they got back to us pretty quickly and said, hey, we'd love for you to come and pitch the Dragons in 2 weeks' time after that. And we were like, whoa, okay, this is moving really, really fast. And in that 2 weeks period, me and my co-founder Asad, we just spent every day pitching in front of each other and practicing our pitch and whatever else, right? Getting ready for the Dragons. And the studio is actually based in Manchester. And we went up there night before. We went to the studios at 8 a.m. and we were kept in our dressing room until like 1 p.m. So it was just us and the mirror. And you don't know whether you want to practice your pitch or you're second thinking something, but yeah, you're just in there for hours. And eventually 1 p.m. came when we went out, and it was our time to shine, to pitch to the Dragons. And it was a really, really interesting experience. I mean, the pitch went well. It started off badly. We got 3 no's from Deborah, Tuka, and Sarah, and I was like, right, this isn't going too well. I'm not too sure about this. And then suddenly Peter and Tej, they put offers on the table, and they started fighting it out to potentially invest in the business. And at that point, we, inside of me, I was like, right, this is going great. Like, this is fantastic. And then eventually we negotiated to accept an offer from both of them in the Den. So yeah, I'd say it turned out to be a successful pitch.
I've actually watched the episode, Dhruvin, and I must say, you both were cool, calm, and collected in terms of pitching, but also answering questions. And it's no mean feat to slay the Dragons, as they say. And you did get that investment opportunity as well. So I don't know how you do it. I probably would have held like my nerves. I probably would have panicked, I'll be honest. And especially the fact that you were locked into your room until 1 p.m., and practicing that up, I probably couldn't do it. But hey, that's another thing that you've done and smashed out of the park. And I want to ask you then, just tying it back, were there any kind of, in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, are there kind of any barriers or hurdles that you faced, and what were they, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so being in this entrepreneurial journey, there's no, you don't learn, right. It's not like education where you do a course and then you go into a job and you put your skills to use. In this journey of launching a business, for example, you learn as you go along. So the challenge is really one, understanding when you need help, because there are at times you're going to need help and advice and guidance, and from someone that is very gung ho, I like to just go and do things. I didn't step back enough to think about, let's say, strategy or where the business needs to go. And I'll give you a good example. So now I know that, you need to spend time working on the business and not in it. And what I mean by that is I spent, in those first couple of years, I spent a lot of time picking and packing orders to customers. And, great experience. And it's definitely something worth doing if anyone creates a physical goods business, because you need to understand the fundamentals. But I think I did that for a year or 2 year too long, because I was spending more time doing that kind of work where I could have spent it growing the business and doing something else, whether it's creating a new product line, doing some marketing, growing sales, right? But it was only when I spoke to an advisor or someone outside and they said, why are you doing that still? That, you shouldn't, your time is worth so much more than that kind of part of your business. So I think, for me, it was kind of learning that as I go along and getting other people's perspective. And it's really interesting because you don't have the formal education, but what you do have is finding mentors and advisors who are 2 to 5 years ahead of you in business, who have made the mistakes. They know what to kind of advise you and guide you in the right way. So that's been one of the biggest aids for me, is speaking to people. I'm having people around me that have been there, done that, to provide advice. Because as a young person in business, you can read everything about Elon Musk and Richard Branson, but actually what they're working on it's literally in space, right? It's so out there. If you're comparing about starting something, can their advice does that really transpire to what you're trying to do? Can you really relate to it? Because they're so different in that sense. I always say, find someone that's a couple of years ahead of you in what you're doing and get that advice, because that's going to be so much more practical and useful than something that you read on, online regarding Elon Musk or Richard Branson, right?
Thank you for sharing that, Drew. I think that's very practical advice. And I wanted to come on to, in terms of Asian leadership and representation in leadership or mentorships, it has been historically quite limited. And what kind of advice would you give to aspiring Asian entrepreneurs, or looking to break through those barriers, or asking for that mentorship, or looking for mentorship?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because one thing to be said is, Asian entrepreneurs, there's a lot of successful Asian business people out there. And one of the downsides, you may say, is they don't like to create a profile around themselves, so you don't know they exist. But there's so many fantastic entrepreneurs, and it comes back to from my heritage. A lot of Indians went to East Africa to work because there was a lot of poverty in India. So things like Tanzania or Nairobi, and they set up businesses and trade, and now they've come back to the UK and they own large pharmacy businesses or whatever else. And there's so many amazing entrepreneurs in the kind of Asian hemisphere. But I think for Asians is one, we are always being driven to do a course which involves medicine, law, or numbers, right? From family, because they know it's the safe bet, and you have a stable job, etc. I think now there's so many, in the UK, there's so many British Asians. There's about, I think, 6 million in the UK alone, where they're in professional jobs and in business as well, where you can lean on to ask again, advice, guidance, or what would they do if they had potential problem or idea. And I think again, leaning on those kinds of people, and now it's a lot easier to find, right? You've got LinkedIn, you've got Instagram, and I'm a firm believer you're probably one person away from speaking to someone you want to speak to. So whether it's Tej Lavani from Dragon's Den or someone else, it's one person generally you're away from within your network that you can, speak to and find that connection, which is always going to help you in your endeavors.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's obviously really important to have a support system around you. Do you feel you've kind of got that support from your family or not really?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that naivety when you're young. And I had this, I always had this thinking around the journey of business is quite easy. And once you start something, everyone flocks towards you, and everyone starts buying what you're creating or whatever else, right? But there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And there's a point where family and friends also play a part, where you believe they're going to support you in that sense, and they will initially, but 9 times out of 10, once you grow and you keep doing what you're doing, there's a point where family and friends can't relate to what you're doing, right? Because it's a kind of a different journey. So actually, for me, like, family and friends is a great time for me to enjoy myself and have a great time, but actually not leaning on them to talk about any business challenges or issues, because it's not fair on them, but two, also they don't have the right guidance to help with that. So having the ability to speak to others that are outside of that circle is really important. I've learned that in this journey.
Thank you again for being so open, Dhruvin. And I saw recently you won the King's Award, and coming from Croydon to Buckingham Palace, that is huge. That's something only people can dream of. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic achievement for me and the team. And how did this come about? So we are involved with a few kind of projects within the UK ecosystem when it comes to business. So, you have Virgin Startup Loans, which is a great provider to help people if they have a business idea but no capital. You can get a loan from Virgin Startups. Through them, I believe I came across the King's Award, and I'd seen this many of times. So actually, Vita Robotics, which is Tej Lavani's company, I've seen them use this emblem on all of their marketing on the tube. So they always had, it's like a E with wings on it. So it's like enterprise and then angel wings, which I'm sure you can connect dots on what they're trying to do there. But I saw it said, 4 times Queen's Award winners. And I always thought, wow, that sounds pretty big. Like that's great. And then one year I heard a little bit more about it, and then I started Googling it. I said, okay, that's actually a process where you can apply and put your best foot forward to win an award. And of course, when we looked to apply, we were applying for the Queen's Award, but unfortunately, of course, the Queen passed away recently, didn't she? So it got changed into a King's Award. But yeah, we had to go through a process where we applied for International Trade Award, which meant we had a business that for 3 years in a row grew significantly overseas, which we did. So a lot of our customers are from North America, so 40% of our revenue is from overseas. And we send our accounts in, you send an application in on why we should win the award. And a couple months later, after the deadline, we received an email that said, can you just get your accountants to sign to verify these numbers, etc., all that boring kind of stuff. And then a couple months later from that, we got email saying you've won a King's Award, and we were just like, oh, we won, like, from nowhere. We were just like, okay, this is fantastic. And then lots of communication came after that, where it was, hey, you'll be invited to a reception at the Buckingham Palace to accept your award. And that was really interesting, because I thought, wow, it came on this like headed cardboard, and it was proper like sealed nicely. And, for people that don't receive letters these days, I mean, a lot of people don't, apart from bills and council tax and whatever else. But I was just like, wow, this is cool. And I just kept it on my desk for 2 months, because we had enough notice, but it was just so nice to look at. And then eventually, when we went to Buckingham Palace, It was a pretty surreal experience walking in, because even as we walked in, and I took my dad with me, because for him, I wanted to also see, a lot of what I do is online, and he can't really see tangible, the tangible elements of my work, and also visual, know this as being someone from an Asian background, brown parents, they're not very good with their words, they're not very vocal, so for them to verbally say anything, you don't know if they're proud of you or if you don't know where they're thinking. But anyway, this was the one time where my dad was outside, and he saw there was loads of people outside Buckingham Palace as I went in, and they're all wondering what's happening. And I think at that point, my dad, afterwards, he said, he was quite proud of me. But he saw me walking into Buckingham Palace, and we went into this reception in Buckingham Palace, and King Charles walked in after 30 minutes of us enjoying canapes and drinks. And they said so there was about 100 of us there, and 30 individuals that had won awards, they were phoned the day before to say they were going to speak to King Charles. And actually, I didn't receive a phone call, so I didn't know about this. But there was like six areas where there was five award winners each, and King Charles was making his way through these different areas, so he'd speak and address these kind of 5 different people at a time. And I just thought, I haven't come all this way not to speak to King Charles. Like, I'm in Buckingham Palace, I didn't come here just for a drink. Let me try speak to King Charles. So King Charles had security around him. He had something called equerries, which are they live in, I believe, the palace. They're almost like servants or royal servants for King Charles. And I kind of went up to him, and I just started speaking to him and said, that's a pretty big outfit you've got on there, because it was pretty heavy, and just started speaking. And then he said, "Hey, do you want to speak to King Charles?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I do." And he was just like, "Wait there for 1 minute," and I just waited. And as King Charles went through the 5th to 6th group, the query told me to stand up or move forward. And as I moved forward, I went into the line of his path as he's walking. So, he put his hand out, and he said, "Hey, nice to meet you." And I just spoke to King Charles one-on-one for about 5 minutes. And it was such a strange experience in the sense of, I wouldn't have thought I'd have a day when I meet King Charles. Like, but it was fantastic. It was an amazing experience.
Wow, that must have been amazing. But for the listeners, tell us, Dhruvin, how was he?
He's good. He had a drink in his hand. He was asking questions, saying how his eyes are buggered. And I told him that, look, there's only 3 things guaranteed in life: birth, death, and reading glasses. So you're not the only one that thinks your eyes are buggered. But yeah, we were just chatting. It was very nice guy.
Let me ask you then, what was his tipple? What was the drink that he was having?
I think he was having a white wine.
Okay, classy.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. I don't know why. That must have been a really surreal experience as well for you, and your dad as well, probably. Obviously, this is a D&I podcast, so I just wanted to kind of ask you why you think diversity, equity, and inclusion is so kind of crucial for business and having that representation.
Yeah, so for me, it's pretty simple. I think the world we move in is moving fast, and I think for the right reasons, there's opportunities for people from different backgrounds, making their way forward, which is so fantastic to see. And fundamentally, if you look at business, you're selling to consumers, and consumers don't look or act in one way, right? They act in so many different ways. So how can you understand a consumer by one single perspective? So actually having multiple voices from different backgrounds in an organization is only going to help the organization thrive and grow forward, right? So fundamentally, if you just look at business, it just makes sense. And then from an ethical point of view, I think people like to help people that look or sound like them. So actually, when doing business, you'd find now through in organizations, a lot of legacy organizations where there is that stereotype of white old males at the top, and they just do business with people that look like them, right? Whereas now, if you have people that look or a different gender, then again they're going to broaden the horizon and diversify the supply chain. So for me, I think it's really important. I think the UK is probably doing a great job at moving things forward. From what I can see, you both are probably going to be a better place to tell me about how diversity and inclusion is actually mapping out in terms of statistics. But yeah, I think it's vital, and again, it's role models. People can see the key people in power positions of power and leadership, which is super important.
And again, from what you said, Dhruvin, you've got to see it to believe it. So you've got to see someone that looks like you or talks like you to really inspire you to go and take that next step. Okay, if that person's done it, I can do it as well. Let's move on to Ocushield then. What have you got? What's the exciting plans? Are you allowed to say what we can expect from Ocushield in the near future? Any products or initiatives that you're working with that you're happy to share?
Yeah, totally. We're really excited about we've gone into the software land, and actually 18 months ago we spoke to about a dozen HR directors and chief of staff because we sell to employers with our kind of physical products, and we said, hey, what do you do when it comes to your team's eyes? And we got 1 out of 2 responses. One was we provide a voucher scheme so anyone can get an eye exam, or 2, if someone does get an eye exam, we allow them to expense it back. And when we asked them about engagement statistics, it was only 2 to 6% of employees actually got their eyes tested from their work. And SMEs were better than enterprises, but enterprises were really bad. And I thought, look, we're all using screens to work. Surely eyes should be higher on the agenda. And we dug a little bit on what the pain points were, and the pain points were employees didn't like admin around vouchers, etc. They didn't like time and travel to get their eyes tested. And third, some people had anxiety being in a room with a weird optometrist like me for 30 minutes, put them off getting their eyes tested, right? So we thought, what could we do to create behavioral change and encourage people to get their eyes tested? So we created an online eye screening platform. So in under 7 minutes, any employee from a smartphone or laptop monitor can screen their eyes. And after doing it, they'll get the results, which will say, right, Vigi, right in your left eye, it seems like your prescription has changed. Your color vision and your contrast sensitivity is also poor. Here's a pathway for you to get that investigated. And then also here's some preventative information for you to read and look at to look after your eyes and enhance your vision. So yeah, we launched that in the market in December, and we're working with companies like Aon and Charles Tyrwhitt to look after their employees with that product. And we're also looking to integrate with private medical insurers and cash plan providers to reach more employees. So we're really excited about that, because 24% of the UK population have never had an eye exam or had one in the last 5 years. So that's at least 16 million people in itself that we can target, plus people that do look after their eyes but haven't had the chance to, get their eyes tested.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people. I don't think I've had my eyes tested since I was about 10. So I definitely need that. And I also think because I guess we don't really like traveling places that much anymore due to the pandemic. So I think it's really good to have that kind of online platform as well to be able to do that. So yeah, that sounds really, really exciting. So yeah, we always end our kind of episodes with a key takeaway. So what would your kind of key takeaway be for our listeners?
My key takeaway would be, if anyone's listening, it's to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think in life you can really grow faster if you align with that statement, because anything that's making you nervous or uncomfortable, one, it means something to you, but 2, also there's a lot of growth on the other side. And now very much so my perspective is, if anything's making me feel a bit funny, then I know I have to lean more towards it. But yeah, if you learn that from when you're younger, something, if I did know when I was younger, I probably would be a little bit more further ahead because I wouldn't have put something off for a long time because I was feeling scared or worried.
Thank you so much, Dhruvin, for sharing that. And again, it's be comfortable dealing with the uncomfortable. That's where your growth happens. And I actually live by that, so it resonates with me. And thank you again so much for coming on the podcast. I know how busy you are, and thank you for sharing these golden nuggets to inspire the next generations of entrepreneurs.
My pleasure.
I wanted to say thank you as well. Just it's really interesting to hear your journey, and also your advice has been Amazing. And thank you to our listeners as well for joining us this week. Please make sure you're kind of following the podcast on Spotify, and feel free to give it a rating and review as well.
Keep your eyes peeled for our next guest, and the episode will be dropping next month. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time on Diversity and Inclusion, Satisfying the Tick Box.